Okay, now we begin the SI signals, beginning with SI number 1, which is dulled eyes. They have this deer in the headlights look to their eyes. So it can look something like this. In some ways, it actually looks like it's overdone. Like, it can look like the eyes are just dulled and not really looking at anything, but also not looking through them. That's the difference. So both PI functions have eyes that are kind of fixed gaze, right? And this fixed gaze has two qualities. In SI, it's like it's fixed and just looking at something probably around 2 or 3 feet away. With NI, it's fixed, but it's like looking through the walls. And that has to do with the upper eyelid being lowered. In the SI dulled eyes, there's a fixed look, but the eyes are not looking through the walls. The upper eyelid is not falling over the eyes. SI2 is confused stare. And this is essentially the first signal, but with the added effect of the brows participating with a subtle upwards pull down from the middle here. So that's basically a confused stare. And SI users will have this kind of look to them. Often they'll stay staring like this as they're talking for a long period of time and telling you about their anecdotes. SI3 is slanting edges. Now, if SI2 was focused on the center area here going up, SI3 slanting edges focuses on the outsides here going down. So when you have them both together, you have the most SI looking eyes ever. But the slanting edges, of course, the outer edges of the eyes and the eyebrows kind of falling over the eyes. Now remember, the eyes themselves remain sparkle because of NE. So the upper eyelid is not lowered. In other words, so there's a heaviness falling over the eyes on the outer edges, but the eyes themselves are actually bright. So you have these bright eyes. You see the eyes are still naive and bright, but the brow on the sides are lowering, which gives them kind of this puppy dog look. So that's slanting edges. SI4 is concerned concentration. Concerned concentration is not just the elevation of this or the lowering of that, but it's this. So this is concerned concentration, and I actually can do this signal because I have SI, and so usually this happens when SI has identified a reason to be cautious, and scowling is actually a type of rejection of information. Scowling happens in PI for the same reason that the delicate withdrawal of the fingers happens in JI. So JI recedes from the environment in a delicate way with finesse in the delicacy of its the distinction, basically in how it differentiates information. With PI, the rejection is ocular, which means it's perceptual. So the rejection is perception. It's like, oh, I don't know about that. I'm not sure if that's something we want. So again, scowling is a type of rejection of ocular information. SI5 is dancing brow. This is a very funny signal to me, but I can't do it. But basically what happens is you see the real-time shift from kind of NE eyes to SI eyes, and it starts as a wave from the outer to the inner. So this is what happens to the brow. They kind of do this. So it starts out here, and then it flattens here, and then it ends up with the confused stare. But I can't do that motion in my eyes because I don't know why. I don't have SI that developed. SI6 is anecdotal rambling, and this is again a psychological signal. This relies on the evaluation of language. So what happens with anecdotal rambling is it's a series of memory recalls. So as the SI user starts to unpack one topic, they're actually kind of looking into their web at one area. So they're introverting. So they're actually introverting while they're looking at you and just staring at you. But they're not actually looking at you. They're looking at their inner web. They've disengaged from you. That's why they have that confused stare and why it looks like their eyes are dull. Why are their eyes dull? Their eyes are dull because their eyes are not actually engaging with you. They've disengaged from the object. And what's happening is they're surfing through the information within. And as they're surfing through the information within, information is adjacently attached to more information. And as they exhaust one data set, they move on to the next data set, and then moves on to the next data set, and the next data set. The data sets are different in NI and SI. So the kind of relay, the narrative they follow will be different. But this is basically a PI narrativism, so that they'll ramble on through the whole narrative, and it can go on for minutes and minutes until they've run out of adjacent points, or they realize that they've gone off topic and they need to come back to it. SI7 is indented sockets. Now this is kind of an anatomical feature that develops kind of like how TI can over time change the face shape. SI indented sockets refers to NE's gentle embedding around the eyes over a very long period of time, creating these eyes that seem to be kind of sunken in to the area around the skin. With NA, you have this gentle embedding, which means the area around the eyes is not really pulled taut. So because there's lack of ocular tension around here, there's a lot of slack, over time, the eyes will seem to sink into folds or sags around the skin. And even if they're not very old, you still see that the tone of the brow, because of the concerned concentration, the slanting edges, the tone of the brow will be heavier than the tone of the eye area, which means that there'll be a contrast. So sometimes you see SI users with a heavier brow, muscularly speaking, and sunken eyes beneath them because the area around the eyes does not have very developed muscle tension. SI8 is concerned eye drifting, and this is a variant of just eye drifting in general, which is a PI signal. So PI has this diagonal eye drifts, so where they try to recall information like this, and then they come back to you, right? And then they, they do this sort of thing. This is what SI concerned eye drifts look like. And it doesn't have to be very diagonal. It can be like this and then coming back to you. It can be like this and then coming back to you. It's just this again, need to disengage from the environment. The way the eyes move away is kind of a way of going into themselves instead of engaging. SI9 is a lightweight inertia. So when you have an SI user, their viscosity, for their PI viscosity, will be a little bit less viscous than the viscosity of NI. So in practice, like an SI user will, they might be looking at you and talking and staring and have confused stare eyes and concerned concentration, but their body might move a little, and it'll have elements of the buoyant undercurrent of NE. So notice how notice how my body has this slight buoyant energy moving, but ultimately there's this lag. There's this viscous after image to every emotion that I have, and it just kind of lightly brings me back to my settled place. and it doesn't look like I'm really as tethered to the ground, uh, but I'm still not floating away. I'm not floating away. I'm here, but I'm not sunk. And we'll get to the sunken element of the NISE oscillation next. So SI10 is a silly sirius, and this is a language psychology signal, and with this has to do with the puns and humors as they manifest from a higher SI function. So this has some collaboration with any, but it's an SI signal because of how this is how SI expresses silliness while not losing the composure of a conductor type. So when a conductor SI user, wants to be funny, it's kind of amusing because they don't ever lose their vibe as somebody who is kind of an adult. So they're kind of an adult having fun, right? And so since this is a language signal, the way it comes out is in, let's say, delivering punchlines without much change to the face, being playful without the body going into PE. So the body remains stiff, and generally has conductor energy, but as they talk, they're kind of being goofy, but their body's not being goofy, but they're being goofy. And that juxtaposition is the silly serious. So you'll often have SI users being hilarious, but they're just kind of sitting there, and they're not being jovial. And so you'll see this a lot in SITEs. SITEs can be very funny, but they just kind of stay there as stumps. So they're funny little stumps, to use an ungraceful word, but I mean it in good humor. And that completes the SI signals.